Welcome in for a D&D Wednesday. Today I want to talk about creating a plot. So last week on D&D Wednesday, we talked about creating a framework for your campaign in building a setting, right? Building a world, building NPCs, building just different things in the world for your players to interact with. And once you have that framework, that allows you to kind of vamp, improv, and work with your players on creating a collaborative story where they get to go to the places that they're interested in. What I want to do this week is take the opportunity to build a plot line that you'll follow. And we're going to do the whole thing, right? Like, what's your end game all the way down to what is session one? And I think there's lots of ways that we can do that. But I just want to get into kind of what the nitty gritty of building a campaign actually is. It's a little bit, I don't know. I feel like this is where most of the questions come in, because I feel like anybody who's interested in DMing, they want to build the lore, they want to build the world, but then it comes to, okay, well, what are we actually doing game one? And that's where people run into a little bit of a problem. So, okay. So the first thing I like to do when I find my plot is, what is my hook? What is interesting about this particular storyline that is going to keep my table coming back, that's going to keep my players' interest as we move forward? This can be any number of things. It can be money. It can be something tied to their backstory. It can be something tied to the location that they're in. You can go through and look at all these things, and, for younger DMs, for any DMs, my advice is steal it from somewhere, right? Like, there's only, I think it was one of the writers that I follow that said, like, there's only like 7 plot lines. You know what I mean? There's only like 7 actual plot line motivations, and everything is just that getting altered. That's the only, it's one of those 7 things that gets altered slightly or changed in the hope that it is unique and interesting. And so don't feel so bad, I guess is what I'm saying, if you steal from your favorite movie or your favorite book or your favorite show. So I was going through and thought about, like, what has been motivating me recently, and what are and I kind of, have some plot hooks memorized of things like I've wanted to do for a really long time in the back of my head. But what has been motivating me recently, and what are some of the things that I've always wanted to run a game based around? And there was like a song that came up that was like very haunting and I liked a lot. And I liked it so much that I started kind of in my head going through what the story would be with the song, and realized it would be perfect for the game that David is playing in. So I decided that's not the one that we're going to talk about on stream today, because he's here watching. So instead, I'm going to go with one of the things that has been motivating me for a long time, and a setting that I really want to put a world in. This idea was born from Star Trek Next Generation. They had 2 different plot lines that I want to take and combine and make a world out of, and make a plot line out of. And so one of them was a civilization where once you reach a certain age, they kill you. Like, once you reach a certain age, they have like a big ceremony, they celebrate your life, and then you die. And the idea is you don't want to become a burden on the younger people who are striving for greatness. Instead, once you reach a certain age, you submit yourself to this ceremony and you die. And it's shocking to us because we place so much value on life, understandably, that we would never think like, oh, well, let's just, I mean, coal the weak, right? Is essentially what you're doing. You don't let anybody get so old that they become a burden to people or society or whatever. David says Leonardo DiCaprio's dating life. Yeah, I mean, that's yes. But for this, I think it was like 60 or 65 or whatever, that they kind of cold the week there. And then there was another one where like, and this was a completely separate episode where like physical fitness was at its peak for this civilization and everything was working out and being on the very top and so on and so forth. But the laws were also incredibly strict, and something so much as like, breaking a flower or something like that could lead to the death penalty. And it was like, well, isn't that unnecessarily harsh? And their point was, well, that means that you won't do it. Right. So, but there was no gray area. It was just dead. And so I liked taking these and combining them. And so, we're going to steal this plot from Star Trek. And oops, that's not what I wanted. We're going to take those. And so we have this city that is in constant conflict with another city. So we have to build their heel to them, right? So starting off, what is this city? This city places high value on physical fitness. Very strict, lawful, right? And once you reach a certain age and are no longer useful, it's, come on, your duty to remove yourself. Okay, so these are the first things that we're thinking, right? And so this world would be dominated by martial classes. With such a high importance placed on physical fitness. Fighters, rogues, paladins, monks, etc. Right? Like these would be the classes that you find in there. And spellcasting is mixed in with all of those, but it's not sought after. It's not brought to the forefront. But of course, they have religions and deities, and divine magic is, something that this city would hold in high regard. So, what would their heel be? What would they be fighting against? What would the problem be? What's the other city, right? And the other city, I think, would be something based on magic. Of course, I have to be able to spell intelligence, which is kind of funny. Did I spell that right? I don't think I did. Well, whatever. So our first city here is going to be young and fit. And our second is going to be magic and intelligence. And spell casting is the most important. I would say like there's a hierarchy of spellcasters. What's up, mental health guy? Where this hierarchy of spellcasters like gained knowledge is highly regarded. So, wizards would be at the very top because they learned everything themselves. And then you'd have like maybe bards underneath that. And then like divine magic underneath that. So, sorcerer is innate magic. So maybe that's next. And then cleric and then druid. And then like down at the bottom is warlock because you get it from a deity, but it's a you like make it, you bargain for it. You know what I mean? It's not something that's innate, and so I think they would look down upon the warlocks. They'd be like the lower class of the magic users, and these two cities have been in conflict for forever. And so that is going to be the source of our plot line, right? These two cities are in conflict. So what would my group be, right? What's the party composition and whose side would they fall on? Age is a blessing here. And whose side would they be on? So the first thing I'd look at is like the party comp. So let's just see if we can find something that'll randomly generate a part. Here we go. So okay, Oath of Redemption Paladin, Way of the Shadow Monk, College of Lore Bard, and a School of Abjuration Wizard. Okay, let's go with this. So Mistari and Vidin are our two city names, right? And let's say they've been warring forever, right? And it's just kind of a clash of beliefs, that is what is causing the conflict. And so that's the generic reason for the conflict. We're going to hammer it down, though, and create a plot line. With a paladin, a monk, a bard, and a wizard, my thought is they would probably be on the Vidin side of things. So let's build Mistari as kind of the villain and Vidin as kind of the redeemable figure. If I'm building Mistari as the villain, let's say a champion has taken hold of the seat there. And I do like my names to mean something, but one of the ways that that we write names in my world, and this is how I do the naming page, is we just kind of go like this. And then we go through and you add in vowels, and that's how you make names. So, I don't like that name. Heb. I don't like this. We're starting over. Maiku. I like that. I don't want to be Tigger. Okay, that's our bad guy. Maiku Tagerfed. Tagerfed. And he is a barbarian leader. Let's go with a smaller one here. Recently claimed the throne by force. Has ordered. So, like, now we're trying to think, what would this guy do that would make him a bastardized figure, right? Spellcasters. Age. Has ordered all spellcasters take part in a trial by combat to the death. And so people who have spellcasting ability are either fleeing the city or taking part in these trials because, you know, a paladin per se would have to do it because they have divine spellcasting, but might think that they could win, you know? And so daily they're arresting spellcasters and putting them into one-on-one trials. and how many do they have to survive to get to live, right? So what would they do it by? Number of gods? I'm thinking like Game of Thrones here, right? In the light of the seven kind of thing. That's too many. So let's instead trials. Need to win. Let's roll a die. 5. Okay, they need to win 5 trials to stay in the city. So essentially, you have to murder 5 people to stay in this in the city, right? And then children are being sent to military academies. And so we're going to turn Miku into kind of a evil figure, right? And he's going to be our plot line 10 stories out. So let's not do that. Let's do this. Kill Miku. It's our end game here. Right? And I wouldn't normally actually make a plot line like this. I would just have in my head, like, okay, long term, I want to make this guy feel so evil that they want to overthrow him. And I'm not going to force my party members to do anything here, but I would take their backstory and try to click it into that scenario. And so maybe my monk and my paladin, I would kind of go to the backstory and try to weave it in where maybe they were from Mistari and have left because the paladin didn't want to murder people. You know what I mean? It was against his thing. Even if they're weak, he doesn't want to murder people. So redemption paladin. Let's see what they get. Oath of Redemption. So yeah, the tenets of redemption. Peace is one of the tenets. Violence is a weapon as a last resort. Diplomacy and understanding are paths to long-lasting peace. Patience. Change takes time. Wisdom. So it would make sense that my redemption paladin has left that city because he didn't want to just murder people, you know? And so as he wrote his backstory, I would take what he wrote and see if I could write it into him being from, originally, Mistari. Monk, Way of the Shadow. It's interesting. It's one of those where it's a little more sneak, little ninja-like. And so why would they want to leave Mistari? What would their thing be? I would say maybe just that they couldn't learn the things they wanted to learn at the academy there. It was too much of a barbaric stand in the ring, blows against each other kind of thing, and like that's not the way that they fought, so they kind of snuck out because that's not what they did. And then my wizard and my bard maybe are from Vidin, and so they're more sympathetic to the Vidin thing. So I would have them probably starting in Vidin and try to build reasons for them to dislike this other city that we have. We're kind of making them the villain. Ooh, maybe the monk's like father got killed or something. Because we did say that like once you reach a certain age, you're no longer useful. That they expect you to kill yourself to not be a drag on the society as a whole. So maybe my monk had a father or mother who died this way, and that's why they don't want to be part of Mystari anymore. Now, let's not make Vidin all good, right? So, like, what could they do that's bad? Magic trials. At a young age, you must show promise magically. And I actually, this is an old idea that I had that I kind of like and would add in here, right? So you, at a young age, you get put into magic school, right? And that's optional. You don't have to put yourself into magic school. But if you do and you go there, if you show magical promise, they'll pay for everything, they'll teach you, and your life will be about whatever magical promise that you have. But if you fail at, say, like 13, right, you become a slave. They sell you into like one of the houses, and you have to serve one of the magical houses as you don't show magical promise, but they already put all this money into you to try to teach you magically. And so you have to kind of be a warden of one of the elites, right? And so like if you want to go and ascend into that elite class, it's a meritocracy. Like if you can do magic, then you can ascend into the elite class in the city. But if you fail, then you become a ward of one of the magical houses. And like, so, you know, the richer magical houses, if their kids can't cut it, they have another magical house that, you know, takes them and treats them well and so on and so forth. But if you're, you know, a commoner and you're trying to have your child get put into this higher status, if they fail, you become basically a servant, you know what I mean? Like a butler to one of these magical families, who has paid for all your trading and so on and so forth. And so, you know, let's use that to make Vidin, a little less savory. And listen, it's optional if you put your child in there or not. You can just live a regular life in the city. But if you want to live in the upper part of the hierarchy, the only way to do it is to show magical prowess. You know what I mean? And so, if you don't put your kids into these magical academies, then you're just going to be a baker for forever. You know what I mean? And some people would accept that. Some people wouldn't. And so we'll make the magical trials part of Vidin, and that way, it's not all roses for Vidin, right? Like they have the reasons that they're less favorable, and reasons that they could look down on it. And we can use that maybe later if we need to create reasons why there's conflict between who the group is fighting for and why they're fighting for them. Okay, so there's Miku. Generally considered brutal, right? So now let's make his lieutenant. And his lieutenant is... I don't like past that. I don't like it. Start again. Oplick. Oplick. It's not terrible. Let's go with Oblick. Refury. Yeah, I like it. Oblick Refury. And he's a paladin oathbreaker. Main advisor. To Miku, known for his brutal tactics and lack of compassion. And what I'm thinking is this is the guy who sets up all the trial by combats, make sure people gets arrested. He's your head of the secret police, city guard type thing. And you've seen this trope done in a lot of shows and stuff like that, and sometimes they redeem him and sometimes they don't. But we want to make him, as the lieutenant, worse definitely than the leader. And I want them both to be evil and hated, but you want it to be worse. But when we're talking about our timeline, we kind of want it to be right. So as I'm thinking of it, I want the end of the campaign to be to kill the recently ascendant to power Miku. I want 2/3 of the way. I want to give them, okay, you've taken out his main lieutenant, right? And that means that overall, their goal is going to be to free the city of tyranny. Now, what can I put here, right? What can I put here and here? Is there something that they need to find or get, or a person they need to find, or something that they need to complete here to get them to these end game spots? And then what are these two? This is kind of session 1 and session 2, right? What am I going to do to bring them together to send them off on this journey? And so we've taken our idea, we've kind of fleshed it out a little bit. It is ignoring the framework that I had before. So this is a, supplement to that framework. We've created a big bad. We've created his lieutenant, Miku and Opalak, right? And so now we have to put something attainable in front of them here and go sessions 1 and 2. So I would start by thinking about sessions 1 and 2. If I was building sessions 1 and 2 here, David asks, is there any benefit to planning past that, or does too much change in these sessions to spend that time? So it really depends if your style of DM. If you're going to railroad your players down a certain path, sure, you could plan out further. If you railroad them down a certain path, you're not going to necessarily have them do what you want them to do. It just never works out that way. But what you can do is you can say, I want this to happen this session, this to happen the next session, and this to happen the session after that. And kind of regardless of their choices, continue to curve the path to send them back to those 3 things. So basically, you let them choose, but whatever they choose behind that door, happens to be the thing that I planned for you to do. I find that 2 things about that. 1, it's difficult to do. You actually have to be better at improvisation to do that than you do just letting them go and create their own storyline. Because you have to come up with a way to curve whatever it was you planned back into the storyline. So it would be somebody who is afraid of improving who would want to do that kind of storytelling, but that person probably doesn't have the improvisational skills to pull it off. And so they're creating their own nightmare by trying to hold strictly to a plan. The other issue with it is you really it's not collaborative storytelling at that point. It is a little bit because your players are filling in the gaps. But if you constantly are dragging them back to whatever you already have planned, it makes it so, it's not exactly collaborative. It's your story and they're in it. And so what I'd say about that is, and that's not to say that that's bad, because if you were to buy a book and run a story, right? Like you were to run Curse of Strahd, that's what that is. And in the book, they can only put so many variations of things that happen based on the player's decisions. But what they're doing is trying to put them in a scenario where the decision that they make is limited to a finite number of options. And then here's what happens if they pick those options. You know what I mean? And it makes writing one of those books really difficult. The longer the book is, the harder it is to make sure that the players stay locked in and follow the path. So I would tell you that if you were going to plan past like a session or 2 ahead, that you have to be really confident in your writing and your storytelling that like this is the hook that's going to pull them in. There are times where you come up with something and you say, oh, that's definitely going to work. But it may be a little bit further down the road. And David, in our campaign, an example of that is the hag. And so I had thought of that, many sessions before you guys went to the hag. But I knew that it was going to be a hook that you'd bite on based on your family story. But even though I knew you'd like the hook, it was constantly an effort to get you guys to do what I wanted you to do so you could go see the hag. And it's why I kind of told you, like, okay, from here, it's really a sandbox. You can kind of go do what you want. But that was how I thought to myself, okay, this is how I'm going to kick off this campaign. And so it's one of those things where you have to be really sure if you're going to plan out that far, that the hook is something that they will find their way to eventually, because if they don't, then you're in trouble. So for session 1 here, I think I'd make it about the Pally leaving, trying to save his order. Bard and wizard can help. Monk sneaks them out. And so this session 1, where they all meet up, maybe it's, we open with the paladin and the monk trying to get out of the city. And so your first interaction together is we need each other, because the monk isn't going to be able to fight off anybody who's trying to stop them from leaving. They need the paladin in case there's, fisticuffs. And the paladin can't get out without the monk, because the monk is the sneaky guy who can kind of, find an open door, unlock a thing, get him out of there. And so maybe the wizard and the bard are on a diplomatic mission or something like that. They all meet. And so I would think I would make session 1 about the paladin and the monk leaving Mistari. So I'd have to build that out, right? Who are they leaving? School, family, guild, right? Why are they leaving? Pally. Peace, right? I mean, so when we looked up the tenets of the Oath of Redemption, peace is number 1. Violence is a weapon of last resort, is literally what it says. So this is just against his nature. And I would probably try to dig into the backstory of the monk a little bit and find out why is the monk leaving. Now, I'm going to need some sort of, these guys they have subclasses already. This, again, was just a random character generator, but I needed to know, obviously, who my party is that I'm writing this campaign for. I would recommend that you do something like this after session 0, right? So you kind of have an idea of what your party composition is. And I would have asked my players for a backstory by this point. So I would search through the monk's backstory a little bit to see if I could find a hook, a reason that they are from Mistari but wanting to leave. For the paladin, I feel like it would be pretty simple. The city just no longer, the current ruler of the city no longer aligns with their idea of what is right, what is appropriate. And so we would need some sort of low-level conflict here, right? But if these guys all have subclasses already, if it's 5.5, you know they're all at level 3. If it's 5e, they may not all be at level 3, but they're at least not at level 1. Wizards get their subclass at 2. Paladins, I think, get their subclass at 2. Monks get their subclass at, well, I'm not sure. But so if they have their subclass, chances are that they have, I think, subclass 3 for monks. I don't know. I want to look, but it's a waste of time. So they're at least a level 2 or 3 party based on this. But you still need a low-level conflict. And so is that at a gate? Is that at a school or guild? Right? This would kind of be based on what age they told me their characters were. So maybe the paladin's whole guild is trying to get out. And they've just kind of said, okay, everybody get out of the city on your own accord, and then we'll meet here, because they know that what the city now represents is dangerous to them. If they are a spellcaster and don't believe in fighting, they're just going to get killed. The guard in the city is just going to kill them. And so, it could just be everybody get out and we'll regroup later. So I don't want to use AI. But I was thinking, like, can I get a backstory for the monk? So let's see if someone has one on, like, Reddit. Perhaps he comes from a temple with a giant golden disc that focuses the sun's light so harshly across the courtyard you'd suffer heat stroke in a short while. So the monk all learn to flit about in the shadows of the marble pillars that run down the courtyard. It's interesting, but not particularly hopeful. Okay, this isn't bad. Can't cast shadow without light. Maybe the monastery has a school of sun soul operating with the current way of shadow. So maybe I can put my paladin and my monk already together. Instead of making it a way of the sun soul, the paladins provide the light, the monks work in the shadows. That's not terrible. So like they have an established relationship, but an understanding that like peace is the answer, right? Kind of like a pacifistic understanding that they need each other. One is the light and one is the shadow. That's kind of cool. I feel like this could lend itself to duality really well, but I don't know how to fully use the backstory. Monk and Pali orders have together in the name of peace and pacifism. Paladins are the light. Monks work in the shadow. I think that's kind of cool. I would run with that. Both helping each other to get out of the city. Both orders helping each other to get out of the city. And this is just who they happen to find. Maybe they know each other. We would look at their backstories to kind of see if they possibly know each other from this city, right? And so the low-level conflict wouldn't be at the order or at the guild because they have the same belief. However, it could be a scenario where like the guard is storming in knowing that these orders exist here to wipe out and arrest everybody, right? So your low-level conflict could be that the guards are coming in to take them out. And then you can just build some low-level town guards to be the ones who are actually, fighting with the party. What we would have to do is create a reason for the bard and the wizard to be there. Maybe the bard and the wizard have been snuck in to advise and see if they could create a magical protection for the order hall, which they didn't finish. So that gives you the opportunity to maybe put that as like a D20 skill test in for the bard and the wizard. Bards are going to be really good at skills, so that gives them an opportunity to kind of shine with their brand new character. Wizards may be casting something that is too high for their level, but they're trying to help, right? And so I would here Google City Guard stat block 5e. So then what I would do is here's a guard stat block. That would be who they would fight. And if I'm feeling cheeky, depending on how powerful I think they are, I might add in like one of these guys. Right? So we're going to have a number of these. And I would start out with probably 6 or something like that, and see how the fight is going. And then either I would have like another 6 come in, or I would have like a bigger, like a, captain of the guard come in, which would be this guy here. So I've got my 2 stat blocks. I've got the story a little bit planned out for session 1. Guards are storming the order house. And so there's all this stuff here that requires me to do certain things to get them together, right? And so what I would do is I would write them starting note, I guess is what I would call it. Let me pull up one from an older campaign. Yeah, I mean, so It's really hard at lower levels, David. He says enough bad guys to make death possible, but also keep the fight interesting. At low levels, it's hard to find that balance. You're most likely going to just pop somebody unless there's really bad rolls happening. But it's a situation where you would most likely want to provide yourself the opportunity to make the fight harder and scale it so it didn't feel too easy. So if you have the original 6 break in, like that's not out of the realm of possibility that a military organization sends in a team of like 6 guys and then they have backup waiting outside. You know what I mean? And so to your players, it doesn't feel like, oh, he's just trying to make this encounter harder for us. There's real world basis tactics built in that kind of make it feel like, oh yeah, that could definitely happen. And so you can keep the fight interesting without breaking the fourth wall. You know what I mean? And if they're just mopping the floor with the guards, sending 6 more guards in isn't going to do you any good. What might do you good is sending in the captain then, right? Like if they're just spanking these guards, then you send in the captain and now you've got a real fight on your hands where they already have some of their resources depleted. If they're kind of struggling with the guards a little bit, but not too much, then maybe sending in a second detachment of guards makes it so the fight is meaningful, but isn't overpowering them. Because if you send the captain in and he just murks them all, now you've got a new storyline, which is you're all in jail. You know what I mean? And that's the best that you could do to keep the campaign alive after having a miscalculation like that. So that would be why I would give myself those options, especially at a lower level. Okay, let's show you this. Now for this one, I don't even know. I didn't pick this one out specifically. I just went to my Google Drive and picked one of them, okay? So for the monk and the paladin working together and the wizard and the bard working together, they would have similar ones of these. And I would use their backstories that they gave me to create sort of story, a recent story about what has been happening to them. So this was the handout that I gave specifically to this character, right? And it kind of explained what is happening in the recent history. That is what I would do in this situation where I'm introducing the fact that they already know each other. And I'd probably send that well ahead of game time so they could read it and get back to me if there was anything that they thought was a problem or didn't like or didn't fit with their backstory. So that's how I get the who are they leaving, why are they leaving, right? And I kind of get it out of the way. I put the 2 of them together in the world. I add the bard and the wizard in, and like the monk and the pally one would be really similar, and the bard and the wizard one would be really similar. Skill checks to magically protect order hall. And I think the idea here would be the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so the new leader clearly doesn't like magic, doesn't know it. So maybe they can use magic to protect themselves. And so the first half of my game would be these skill checks to cast things like alarm or glyph of warding or consecration, something like that. Can they use that to protect the hall from these guys getting in? If they succeed on the skill checks, because it's for me, I don't care if my players avoid fights as long as they have the option to fight, right? And so I'm fine with them selecting not to fight, but I want to make sure I'm putting fights there for them to use if they want to. So the first half of the game, we'll do the intro, the role play. We'll do skill checks for them to see if they can protect the order hall and put up things like alarm and so on and so forth. If those skill checks are successful, we'll let them have the ability to sneak out and miss this fight. If they do, I still give them XP for it. Avoiding a fight is worth as much as winning a fight in my eyes. And so if they pass their skill checks, they can sneak out. While they're sneaking out, I would give them an opportunity where, like, okay, you're in the rafters sneaking out because you knew that they were coming because your skill checks worked. But you can use that, instead of using that to get out, you can use that to ambush the ambushers if you want. And I would give them like a surprise round in the attacks, and maybe separate the two waves where, you know, before David and I were talking about how you put the extra characters in there depending on how the fight's going. If they ambush, then right when these people walk in the door, we ambush them. That is wave one. And then they get a second ambush on the second group of people that walk through the door, right? And so it makes the fight easier for them as well as a reward for passing the skill check. If they fail the skill checks, we turn it into an ambush. They get caught off guard, city guards breaking in, and now you just gotta fight to survive. And the fight would be the second half of that first session. And I'm pretty sure that would take up a 3 or a 4 hour session. I would go through and refine some things. So what I would do here would be like, go and give names to the head of the order, the people that they trust in there, people that they've worked with before, how they know the wizard and the bard, where the wizard and the bard came from, how the wizard and the bard got to be introduced to all this. Those are all the little things I would go through and just make sure I had a quick answer for. It would take me another probably 30 minutes, 45 minutes to just go through and be like, okay, here's what they're doing. But this is essentially session 1 planned out. Bang, there you go. And so if we go back to our timeline here, what we're going to put here is escape the order. And then game 2 is going to be escape the city. And in terms of session prep for me, it makes it really easy because I'll show you exactly what I'm going to do. Right? Bang. Okay. Now, listen, is that something that you want to do often? No. But all these guards in the city would have the same stats. So, for session 2, I would create a different fight for them to make sure that they have some variety here. So maybe it's champions of the culling. And I would definitely come up with a name for that. So spellcasters who fought their way through the gladiatorial trials and won, they would definitely have some kind of like revered name, right? find them in the city and attempt to apprehend. Thank God I'm pretty. Why am I spelling more stuff wrong? Yeah, spelling is not my strong suit. Hello, dyslexia. But you guys understand what I'm writing here. Okay, so depending on what the party is, I would then go into the monster manual and find some sort of paladin, cleric, eldritch knight fighter, something like that, and have them have a battle with the party on the streets of the city, right? And I would put this right at the beginning. The idea here, I think, would be you want your party to get comfortable with their class and how to play it. And you also want to give them a level early on in the first couple of sessions to have them feel like they're progressing and making a difference, right? So I want to try to get 2 fights in this session 2. The first one being this attack that they have to survive on the street. I think it's pretty basic though. Like, I don't think there's anything more that needs to be said about it. And then I'm going to have escape the gate. And that's where these city guards are going to come back in. If they win the first fight handily, they can sneak out of the gate. This would be some sort of them crawling up on top of the wall, fighting several guards in like small clusters rather than one big fight, and that being the way that they get out. And so if they're in a situation where they are losing the fight to the champions, I would then tell them, like, okay, you can see the gate, like you can make a run for it. But if you make a run for it, then you have to survive the gate as well. And we would essentially turn the one conflict into 2 conflicts. If that happened, and this is not something that you tell your players, of course, but if that happened and they make a break for the gate, they're obviously at a huge detriment to try to win that fight. So what could you do? Well, they were just flushed out of their order hall. Maybe other members of the order are on the street and you can provide them some help in terms of NPCs for, like, we're going to try to all get out of this gate together. And so maybe that's in the form of the order is already attacking the gate. So if they're limping their way there, they don't have to fight as many of the guards. Maybe it's in the form of the order sees them in the street fighting these champions and comes and helps them. Maybe it's in the sense of they get healing from them before they attack the gate in between the 2 fights. There's lots of ways that you could have their order come in and try to help without having it seem, fake or something like that. And so that would be my week plan for session 2. I wouldn't spend too much time on it because you have to see how session 1 goes first before session 2. So session 1 is escape the hall, escape the order. Session 2 is escape the city. I then would say, okay, in my mind, ideally, what is session 3? And I wouldn't plan it the same way that I planned 1 and I wouldn't plan it the same way that I'd plan 2. I would say, okay, what would be the next logical step? And just kind of have it in the back of my head for while I'm talking with them in those first 2 sessions, right? Because I don't want it to seem like I haven't thought about where they go after that, right? So in session time, session 1 and session 2 are going to take 4 hours each, but in game time you're talking about like a 45-minute span for 2 sessions, right? Like the amount of time that passes in your world is like 45 minutes as they are trying to escape here. And so you better have a plan for session 3, because what are they going to do the minute they get out, right? The minute they get out of the city. And so after they escape the city, is this where I introduce an NPC druid that helps them and they run to the forest? Do I immediately send them back to Vidin, and maybe the wizard says, come back to my, where I live, and I'll help take care of you. We'll figure out what your next steps are at my place. Same thing with the bard, could do the same thing, right? So I would just have like a basic plan here. After they escape the city, I would say I want to send them to the forest for cover. And maybe we have an NPC out there who left the city a while back because they saw what was happening. And so a ranger makes more sense than a druid. So let's just make it a ranger. Right? And so the ranger's been living in the forest, sees them escape the gate, kind of sneaks up on them, Aragorn style, and is like, come with me, I'll get you food. We'll hide you. We'll make sure they can't come find you. And then go from there. And so in the forest, maybe you have a run-in with a beast. Maybe you have a run-in with more guards who are out there getting them. Maybe you up the level of the guard by making these, okay, these are the hunters. These are the rangers. They knew that these people escaped and got out of the gate. So now they are being hunted by, rangers from the city, trying to find and apprehend as many of them as they can. So that, I know that's what I'm aiming for in 3. And I still have this one spot here where, like, what is my first moment of real success for them? What's the moment they feel like they got something? And maybe it's recover something from the order. So we get them to sneak back in to into the city and go to the ransacked hall. And their first win, their first real success is recovering something from the order hall, right? And so as I'm looking at this is game 1, this is game 2, this is game 3, right? This is game like 8 to 12, somewhere in there. This is game, 20. And, almost a year into the campaign. But I would probably take this guy and introduce him here, right? So the guard that walks in, that's the big bad, is maybe Opalek, or maybe they see him as the doors are closing behind them as they escape the city, right? Because I want to start making him the evil guy, right? Maybe he's out there in the woods hunting for them. Maybe they find a note on one of the dead rangers that has their names specifically, that's signed by Opalek. All things that you can do to start building up this guy. So when they fight him and beat him, it feels like a win, right? So recover something from the order hall. I would certainly make Opalek a part of that too. That's probably where I'd introduce Miku as well. as they've caught his attention for some reason. But yeah, so here you go. Session 1, 2, 3, session 8 to 10, session 15 to 20, and then session, 25 to 30, depending on how long you go. And, this could be a couple years down the line. This could be a year into the campaign. This could be a couple months into the campaign. There's no telling that you get all the way to the end, but it's just kind of creating aiming points for your party as they're moving through, so it feels like they're accomplishing something. So that is how, at least I, take something that is just an idea, a cool plot line, a cool twist, something like that. That is how I take it and make that a meaningful storyline for my party. There's lots of ways to do it, but that is the way that I do it. And so, feel free to steal any of this stuff if you want to steal it. But if I was starting a campaign, there you go. That is my quick and dirty. I would probably make a name list, like I said, as well. Key players, right? So names that are already assigned to people, and the key players, like we talked about last time. Just have those names ready to go, and just maybe a one-liner about each person, key player. And then a list of random names that aren't attached to anybody. And so when the baker on the street hits the barbarian over the head with a rolling pin and saves their life, and they go, "What's your name?" You go, "Oh, I have a name. Here's what it is." So that is how you take just something that interests you, some kind of idea, and turn it into a whole campaign story, much less a session or two. And I would do that throughout the campaign, right? Like I would take whatever is inspiring me at the moment and find a way to make it a session or a couple sessions in the storyline with a fresh kind of side plot or idea, because you don't always have to follow the main plot line, right? There are side quests. And so for those side quests, each one, you can build a one session or a multiple session with something that's inspiring you.